Can you save Eugene in Choo Choo Charles? The old goat who accompanies us as we start our grand adventure into the world of Choo Choo Charles unfortunately meets an untimely end. But what if this wasn't the case? Can we actually save Eugene? Well, it was this very question that started one of my most absurd playthroughs of this game, and I made it my mission to keep this dude alive. I hope you enjoy. So not long after starting the game, Eugene is talking to us on the phone, and then we meet up with him as he rows us out to the cursed island of Aranirum. Eugene, who is actually the fastest man in the world, runs up to the shack with us, tells us to grab a key, and then personally shows us the goods. The goods being our own weaponized train. And Eugene is super excited as we break out of the train shed and start our hunt for Charles. However, despite his guidance about fighting against Charles, he unfortunately meets his end as he perishes on the train track. At this point in gameplay, I thought I immediately did something wrong. Like, could I have saved him if I was more accurate with my headshots? And that thought stayed with me throughout the game. But in my second playthrough, I vowed it would be different, and I would do anything in my power to ensure this dude survived. And on this channel, I like dissecting and breaking games, so you can probably guess how this goes. So starting off, as we make our way up to this train station shed, the surrounding area around us is actually closed off. And I bring this up because if I'm going to survive against Charles and save Eugene, I'm going to need resources that are not available in this starting area. However, this area is basically a tutorial, and so there are invisible walls all around this area that prevent you from actually going past it. So I was trying to figure out how I could get around this, and unfortunately I don't think it's possible, because I was trying to die, so basically I jumped to my death, and I respawned back by the train station. Now simply playing this section over and getting enough headshots on Eugene as you're riding away on the train does not work. Eugene will die and there's nothing you can do. So my first thought was, I need the flamethrower. I need to go grab this weapon that is called the bug spray. Now to do this, we're going to sequence break and we're going to no-clip through this invisible barrier and then run across the countryside without our train to the burning shack. And by turning on the water here, we can extinguish this shack and get ourselves the weapon, the flamethrower. This weapon is honestly really good because it prevents Charles from actually getting near the train. And if Charles can't touch the train, then Charles cannot hurt Eugene. However, to ensure that Eugene survived, I actually went ahead and upgraded my train to the max status. Or basically near the max status. I think my speed was the only thing that wasn't upgraded. So when I go back inside this train station and Eugene sees this train, it is totally decked out. It has all the upgrades and it is a killing machine for Charles. But I kind of overlooked something, because when breaking out the train shack and hunting down Charles again with Eugene by my side, well, the train was actually too fast. At speed 9, Charles could not actually reach the train. But Charles was also too far from our train, so my flamethrower could not damage him. I didn't have any other weapons on me, so I just swapped to the machine gun, but it wasn't doing enough damage fast enough. My original goal was to forever stall Charles behind us so that they would eventually die, but something unexpected happened. My train actually looped around the map and went back into the train station again. However, the back door for the train station does not open until Eugene dies. When Eugene dies, this door opens, and we also gain access to throwing the train in reverse. So the train went through this door, but I didn't, so it forced me out of the train, and Charles was just tearing through me. So I panicked and I no-clipped through the wall, and I could see Charles just like rubbing up against it. But it was only a matter of time before Charles was going to figure out his way in, so I fired up the train again and we left the train station. But Charles was pinned up against the back wall, so I truly thought I lost him. But that's when I realized that this Charles is actually a bit different than the one we encounter throughout the rest of the game. Because this Charles would never stop chasing me until Eugene died. And actually, this Charles also has rubber band physics applied to their running speed, so they could always catch up with me despite the distance. They came barreling over the countryside so fast that I had no idea where they came from. So I eventually came back to the train station again, but Charles was smarter this time. He went around to the front of the station and I freaked out when he came inside. So I tried no-clipping through the back wall, but when I have no-clip active, the game does not detect where the player is at, so it unloads the objects right here to save memory because it no longer detects the player nearby. And it was through this mistake, this moment in panic, that Eugene once again died. And I realized this was going to be way more difficult than I thought. So I mourned the loss of my friend and I started rethinking my strategy. So I actually went back in time to a previous save, and that lowered my train speed to 4. And this made it so that Charles was always right behind me, but within distance so I could burn them with the flamethrower. So the Charles in the main game normally would run away after about a quarter of his health was gone, but this Charles has different programming. He will continue to take punishment even though at train speed 4 he can never reach me. So I was surprised that he didn't run away, but as I got him closer to death, I understood why. This Charles was invincible. Depleting his health bar completely did nothing. And this only added difficulty to my mission, because the only way to save Eugene and escape Charles was to not use my train. Or at least at this moment, that's what I was thinking. But then I was thinking, well, what if I use the Charles safe spot? Because I remembered on my playthrough that Choo Choo Charles would not run on the bridge on the north side of the island. And that's because this bridge was the ultimate trap for Charles. So the game keeps him off the bridge so it can't be blown up early. And I remember this because I parked my train on this bridge, and Charles could not get me. But in order to accomplish this, I was going to have to switch over the train tracks by hand before Charles started chasing us. So I ran around the map and did this, and then boosted the train to a higher speed again, and Eugene made it to the bridge with me, and here they could be safe. It worked. Charles could not get to Eugene and kill him. But Choo Choo Charles would not leave me alone. I was trying to start the quest for the explosives, and he was just like fusing with the building trying to get me. And of course, the NPC would not talk to me because they were terrified, because Charles was right there. So I had to creatively think of a way to banish Charles. And my solution was to utilize the dynamic loading and unloading of environments. So as long as the player could not be detected, certain interiors would not load. And so when we go to the northern mine that's right near here, well, the mine entrance is a void. The interior of the mine does not load because the player is not detected. And so we can use this as an edge case to banish Choo Choo Charles. And I only thought of this because nearby that tall bridge, I witnessed Choo Choo Charles jump down from the top to the bottom. And this kind of looked accidental, like the model slipped off the terrain and it was not supposed to happen. So knowing this could occur, I made Charles rush at me at the entrance of the mine, and he fell way down to the great beyond. But even this banishment, even this total exile, only gives you about 15 minutes of time. Because after a certain amount of time, Choo Choo Charles actually made his way back from the void and was back on the map hunting me down. So at this point I realized, in order to save Eugene, I was going to have to do everything in the game on foot before Charles was added to the map at all. That means before the train ever left that first train station, I need to finish all the story quests on the map to get to the final fight. So, while Eugene waited for me, I ran across the countryside and planted bombs on the bridges, and I went to each of the 3 mines and grabbed the eggs. For some reason, the game wasn't autosaving for me, so dying at all meant that I had to do everything over. I think this is because of the sequence breaking, but also because I was messing with the game itself with modifications like the no-clip. So now I have all of the things I need, and I started the train up and I got Eugene to a safe spot. Or at least I thought, because I ran into a new issue on the ride over. So when I was about 80% to that destination, the train would just shut off, and this would cause us to die. I'm not sure what happens, but for some reason the train just stops moving, and at this point Eugene would actually be cloned. So he would be beside me like he always is, but if I went and looked inside, we'd see that Eugene was stuck inside as well. There was a second copy of him and he was like frozen and running in place. It was very strange. But eventually, I anticipated where the train stopped and I was able to throw it back into motion, and we got to the safe spot. And as you can see, here at the safe spot we can take a closer look at this inside Eugene, and it's kind of terrifying. His clone is just frozen in place. Now, from this point, getting to the final fight would be very, very difficult without cheating of some kind. So for this section, I just flew over the map with no clip so that Choo Choo Charles would not kill me. But here we are. We're now at the final fight of the game, and Eugene is technically still alive. So we trigger the cutscene and we run on down, and I was very, very happy that Eugene was still with me. And so was his clone. But man, I had no idea how hard this final fight was going to be. I wanted to do this final fight legitly, but Eugene just kept dying over and over again. Eugene only gets 3 hits from this powered up version of Charles before he dies. And 90% of the time when you start the final fight, Charles hits the train before you can move. So you only have 2 hits left. The problem is that Charles teleports randomly, and sometimes he can spawn near the train, ensuring there's nothing you can do to prevent him from hitting you. I started off hoping I could play it completely safe with the flamethrower, but that wasn't going to work. It took too long to damage Charles, and time was my greatest enemy due to Charles teleporting to randomized locations. So I opted for the flamethrower to rocket launcher combo, as I did eventually go back for the boomer. Fun fact, I was actually the one who submitted the rocket launcher name as Boomer for this game, and 2-Star Games actually used the suggestion. Anyways, slowing down Charles with a bug spray flamethrower was necessary, and while he's being burned, using the boomer will let me deal massive damage. It's very important that you try to get Charles burning before he starts glowing to teleport. That way he burns through the teleport and he can't move once he warps. This keeps him from hitting you in certain situations. But man, this was brutal! It took me over 2 hours of attempts to even come close to beating this fight without Eugene dying. Sometimes losing with just a sliver of health left on Charles. And then, something really weird happened. This was not my doing at all, but one time, Charles loaded in with his torso up in the air and his legs down below. I freaked out when it happened, but my only hunch is that since Charles randomly spawns after the cutscene, that he spawned inside an existing object. His legs went beside the object, and his torso went up top. But I took this as a sign. This would be the run. And honestly, this run was frustrating, because in order to shoot Charles accurately, I'd have to hit his spider legs with a boomer. But because of this glitchy Charles setup, Charles had trouble navigating, and this prevented me from taking damage in some situations. But this was it. This was the run. I put Charles down finally. Eugene had survived, and during the final cutscene, you can see him riding alongside me as Choo Choo Charles was blown into the air. By defying the train gods and twisting the game, I changed history. Eugene would live on, and I felt proud of this accomplishment. But thanks for coming to my TED Talk about saving a boomer from a demonic spider train, and I'll see all of you in the next video. Cheers!